Welcome to Andra and of course all of you who are here in these sessions. This time we have a session in English. I'm really looking forward to this session. It sounds really interesting. Andra is here today from the ErsteBank. She will talk about how you can cut off development times and getting real feedback from the customers. I'm really excited to listen to this. And to all of you guys, if you have some questions to Andra, please capture this in the chat, and Andra will answer this at the end. We have for sure some minutes left. If we're running out of time, you know we have WonderMe, and I'm sure also Andra can also move into WonderMe and have some minutes also to answer some open questions. Then I'll pass the floor now to Andra and let's start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. Welcome, everybody. I'm Andra Stefanescu. I'm Scrum Master in Erste Group. And today I will show you a design sprint case study from Erste Group. What will be our focus points? Why are we here today? I will just explain you shortly what the design sprint is. Then we will go together through an operational risk case study and what were the benefits for our users. And at the end, just shortly, how do we actually embed the design sprints into our Scrum development cycles? I'm very happy to be here together with you. It will be a little bit interaction today. So if you have your phones by hand, you might need to scan some codes, and we will use slide of all ports. And because I wanted to start in a very active way, I would like to ask also to start with a question. Which of the challenges below have you experienced so far in your project? You can just scan it with your phone or go to slido.com and enter the code Agile Austria, of course. And the answer could be long development cycles, or too much focus on the product instead of the problem to be solved, too many discussions, too little outcome, talking versus doing mindset. And we see already some results coming. Thank you for taking the question. Okay, I will just wait to see. I see they are still changing, and 10 of you already answered. Thank you for that. So interesting. That is in the moment quite a big too many discussions, too little outcome. Let's wait, maybe this changes. Okay, so we have quite a winner here, too many discussions, too little outcome. And actually, yes, this is one of the problems that also happened back then in 2010 when Jake Knapp and John Teratsky, the ones who invented the design sprint, were actually handling, and they wanted to know what can happen in a normal environment where you have one idea, then you try to build it, then you launch it, and then you have the feedback from the real users. And this building phase, sometimes is growing and growing, and sometimes it's like you don't even know where the end is. And exactly this, with too many discussions and too little outcome, was the problem. And this is something which happens in a lot of projects, as you might have experienced and told right now. And this is why these two guys, which were working back then at Google Ventures, invented the design sprint, which is actually to cut off the whole development part and the launching, and to go from one idea to testing it with real users and get feedback from them. So this is saving a lot of time, and instead of working for a few months to develop a new feature or a complete new product, or maybe 1 year, you just go and make a prototype and just check it with real users to see what they want, what they actually have to say before you implement it. And this is how you save a lot of time, energy, and of course, money. So as promised, I will show you today an operational risk case study, what we have done in Erste Group, and why did we wanted to do a design sprint. We had the following challenge. We wanted to test with real users a new part of a risk assessment process. And as you know, processes are quite hard to change, especially in big corporates. And we were having a lot of endless discussions and a lot of meetings, which were ending with a lot of other meetings. And one moment in time, after I read the book of Jake Knapp, which is called Sprint Book, I said, okay, let's try it. And I proposed to everybody, let's try to see how a design sprint could work. And we managed to solve it in 2 weeks. Usually you do it in 1 week, but nowadays it was developed more and more, and it's better to use a back-to-back design sprint. I will explain you why. So how did we do it? This is a sprint overview. We had an alignment phase, an ideation phase, and of course a validation phase in 2 weeks. And we started from a 2-year goal, what we want to achieve in 2 years from now. And we were asking ourselves, okay, what can happen on the way that this goal is not achieved? And these are the so-called sprint questions. Then we were iterating on different solutions to have some concepts on which we can choose on. Then we developed a prototype. And then in the 4th day, we had the real users feedback. And after the real users feedback, we got our learnings and we went into the iteration week, which is the 2nd week of design sprint, where we of course iterate on the sprint questions. So the iteration questions, we did a lot of other concepts to improve the first week ones. And we did an iteration prototype. Afterwards, of course, we had again user testing with other users than in the first week. And then we had again learnings. And this is a little bit a metaphor, like in the first week, if you do only 1 week, it's just like throwing a dart in the dark with like the whole room is dark and you don't see anything. And you might go in the middle of your target or not. But in the 2nd week, it's like turning on the light and then you really see it visible. And the prototype that we managed to do with the 2nd week iteration was 95% also the same in production in 4 months from the prototype. So that's quite a nice achievement. Just guide you through shortly, how was the idea to the prototype? So how was this going to happen? Based on the goal and the sprint questions, we iterated on lightning demo, some inspiration from outside of the company. And then we have created the concepts, which are just hand drawings, yeah. And then we had the prototyping. This sprint that I'm referring here was happening in person, but I have run several ones in an online environment as well. So you can do it however it fits to your team, depending, of course, on the situation, on where they are located and so on. The map is something that you want to do in the first day of the design sprint, and it's somehow finding the target. In our case was to create a new process step. There was already an existing process, but it was quite old. And we wanted to just renew it and start it like nothing was there. And in the first day, we were focusing on which area of the process we want to focus. And that's something which is not standard. That's why I wanted to show it today to you, because a normal design sprint is where you have a user, you have an kind of like identification, where do the user know, for example, your website, how does he get there, then which are the steps that the user is doing, and then at the end, of course, what is the goal, what is the outcome of that specific step. But in this case, we turned it around and we did the map with a process tab with sources of information and steps, because this is quite usual to happen in corporate. So this is why I chose this example for today. After the first part where the map was created, we have chosen what is in 2 years from now happening. In an ideal world, what will the product look like? This is the question that helps you to have a vision. And this is the question actually that can be put in any kind of gathering together of people talking about vision of any product or strategic, let's say, team collaboration and so on. In this case, it was in 2 years, we will have a solution that guides the users to identify and categorize risk events and assess using the grid. The grid, so-called, you will see it in the prototype. It's just a screen of a summary which helps an operational risk person to identify where the risks are for a specific event. It's a little bit more detailed, let's say from the banking environment, but it's just an example to give you an impression how this could look like. After the 2 years goal, the next question can be, which can be the critical obstacles ahead us? So what can happen, what can stop us that we are not able to reach the 2-year goal? And these are the sprint questions. These are also happening in the first day of the design sprint usually. And in this case, you see some bullets there because we were also like voting on which is the most important question that we wanted to answer in that sprint. And this was, can we build a workflow tool which is easy enough to be understood and followed to reach end of the assessment? So it was focused very much on how intuitive and easy to use is the system for someone who actually didn't have any training, because we wanted also to lower the effort on the trainings of the users. And then we had on the first day also, but in the afternoon, some concept creation. And this is a very creative moment of a design sprint, which helps you through some specific steps to come with your mindset in the creative mode. And it's really, really funny to participate in such a thing. It takes around 3 hours to do that. And usually everybody is just drawing by hand and then uploading if it's an online one, or putting them on the board if it's an in-person one. The concepts are looking like this, what you see on the screen. And you see a lot of red dots because after the concepts are drawn, we have in the second day of the design sprint, concepts are voted. And the decider, which is the one who is actually the one who can take any kind of decision on the whole sprint, together with the team, the whole team, they are taking a decision of which of the concept they want to choose, which is the solution that could solve the initial challenge that we said we want to solve. And based on that concept, there is then created a so-called storyboard. This is also on the second day of the sprint in the afternoon happening. It can be done as here in an in-person, in a whiteboard, or of course online, it's also possible. And why is this happening? Because you want to have a specific way of presenting the screens before you do the prototyping. And I'm talking here about, of course, the digital product, but this can be also done for any kind of other products. The idea is to have around 8 screens, 8 steps in which you identify, okay, what's happening here? Where is the user clicking? What's happening after he clicks here? What's the next one? And so on. And you use the solution concept to be able to come up with this. And what's very important at this point in time, to have also a check with the people who are able to give you details upon how are the words, because words are counting in a prototype. And you want to check this before you start the prototype to make sure that you have all the information you need. After that, in the third day of the design sprint, it's usually happening the prototyping. It's either 8 hours, or if you do an iteration sprint in the second week, you get also additional 16 hours. So in total, there are like 3 days for one sprint and each iteration. And this specific prototype was built in React. It was created by a team of developers with very deep understanding of the business insights as well. And I just have created also a little video so that you can have a little bit more insight. It's about a user who wants to create an assessment, an operational risk of an event. He has some steps there. You see there some steps on the upper part. He answers to some questions, of course. There's a questionnaire in between, a very easy to use and logical way of putting the questions there. And after he goes through the steps and answer to the questions in the questionnaire, he gets a summary page. It looks like this, and this is the grid that I was telling you before. Very simple, of course, here shown. That's more than that in the prototype itself. The main idea of the prototype is that it looks real enough, but it's not a real product. It's a fake one. And that's all that counts, to look real enough, because the real users will give you feedback about it. And this is how it looks, the user testing in Miro. We do this every time we have a design sprint, independent if it's in person or online. We collect, depending on the users that we have, all the outcome. There's on day 4 of the design sprint is happening, where we do a minimum 5 interviews with 5 users who are going through the prototype and giving us feedback on what do they like, what do they miss, what would they, let's say if this product wouldn't be chosen to be developed, how disappointed they will be, and so on. There's some scoring happening. And in this case, there was also a checkpoint every third or fourth sprint to be able to answer to the sprint question, because this was more focused on how intuitive is the prototype, the tool. So we made some checkpoints. This is actually invented by our team because it was not in the initial sprint book. And these checkpoints were related to the fact how many questions, like additional helping questions, did the user put when going from one screen to another, or how many kind of like confusion points did he have, and so on. The outcome of the user testing was quite amazing, with 9.5 points out of 10 as a prototype score, with very good feedback related to the how intuitive is the system, and 9.3 points out of 10, very disappointed if the product doesn't get built. And here I wanted also to arrive what was actually bringing this for our users, because our users are from Austria, but also from other countries like Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Czechia, and so on. And we have users from 8 countries. Some of them also participated in the user testing. And what was happening before the design sprints? Usually there's a lot of endless discussion, no outcome, and frustration. This was also happening related to this risk assessment process. We were struggling for some months. And afterwards, when we started to use the design sprints, this was bringing, of course, increase of happiness and productivity. Also, before we were trying the design sprints, there were a lot of months wasted trying to figure out the direction, because there were people saying this and this and having different perspectives, or talking about the same thing but in a different way, and we were not aware that they're actually on the same page. Versus, of course, when using the design sprint, having a clear direction, in this case in under 2 weeks. And before the design sprint, it was for our development team a so-called development in the dark, because you don't know until the user is putting his hands and tries the new product what exactly he wants and what is the feedback upon what you're building, versus after using the design sprint, getting feedback from real users before implementing the features. And now, as I talked a lot, I would like to ask you to join the quiz. There is the quiz that you can join with the code or just going to slido.com and enter the code, Agile Austria. I see some already joining. So I'm looking forward for more people to enter, and thank you for being interactive here. Thank you, Michael, Andreas, Tatiana, Claudia, Karina, Elizabeth, Michael, Peter, Wolfgang, Chris, Elizabeth, Mingo, thank you for entering. I wait a little bit that the list is growing and then I will start the quiz. And now you can answer which of was the biggest benefit of using design sprints in this use case that you just saw. What do you think was the biggest one? Increase happiness and productivity, find a clear direction in under 2 weeks, or get feedback from real users before implementing new features. It was, of course, a little bit of everything, but I'm interested in what do you think was the biggest one? And it's, of course, depending on each team. Let's see. Yes. Getting feedback from real users before implementing new features. Yes, this was exactly the biggest benefit in our team there on this specific design sprint with assessments and the process. Because there were a lot of ping pong and a lot of users not even being involved before we started to do design sprints. And it was an aha moment that we actually want to ask them about where do you use this? What is, let's say, the final outcome and where do you use it? And how do you want to look before we started to do all the steps before that? Okay, we have also some winner from the time. I just put this for fun here. And very important also to explain you how actually to design sprints are fitting in our team to the Scrum development cycles. We are working, yes, in Scrum development cycles, and we use all the let's say planning and dailies and everything what is there and what you guys are actually also using maybe. But how did we incorporate? Because it took some time until we managed to find the rhythm and how to do it instead of like blocking the whole team for 2 weeks. And then what do we do now? Compared to every time we have a big feature of the product, every time we start a new module, we want to take the opportunity to use a design sprint. And that's the first step that we do to find the product vision there and what is for user most important to happen. What is the prototype that they like? What do they don't like? It can also be that it's a complete failure, and this is also fine. It can be that it's crap, the prototype, but that saves also a lot of months. Imagine what would happen if we would develop that in a real environment. And after we get the feedback from the design sprint, that's a so-called execution sprint, where we bundle together and we embed it in the prototype done in the design sprint, so that we have already a prototype which fits very well to what's going to happen in the real development. And then we start the real development, of course, with all the UX and UI design details. This is how we do it. And from time to time, we also play around a little bit, and we don't do the whole design sprint when we have already a vision, but we have a small feature for which we want just to draw the concepts or just to have a small prototype so that we can have more details. I'm going to ask you now to turn around and think in your own projects and in your own companies, what would be the benefits in your setup using design sprints? Because this would be interesting now for you after you saw a case study of what happens in other companies, where do you think this would fit in? What would be the benefits for you in your teams or for other projects that you might have been involved or will be involved? Yeah, let's take some time and answer to this. You can either scan the code or go to slido.com. You will have this, of course, on the phones there when you enter. So let me know if it's working. Yes, we get the first answers. Getting a clearer picture of what customers need early on. User-oriented business value, finding out if a product is useful before the first release. Focus of our time and energy on executable solutions, small first steps. Better understanding what the customers want and even better need. Focus on UX topics separated from domain discussions. Don't have to develop in the dark, but will with light on. Reduce discussions with the customer, high initial value. Avoid team frustration from not accepted features. Thank you so much for answering. Now it's a time that we have a Q&A session. Maybe, Christian, you can help me to see what is in the chat right now. I will also open it. And yes. I would love to hear, yeah.
Thank you very much, Andra, for the insights. Yes, we have some questions. Maybe some are also coming up in the next few minutes because we have some minutes left. Dodo, do you want to ask yourself the question?
Yes, I asked myself, or I was wondering if it is enough to ask 5 users for their feedback. Did it turn out to be representative enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the question, Dodo. We figure out, yes, we tried with less than 5. We tried with more than 5, like 8 or 9. And with less than 5, sometimes you cannot find too many patterns. So it's hard to get like a conclusion. With more than 5, then you start to get a lot of details upon different features, and you kind of like lose yourself in details instead of staying and focusing on what's most important for the users. There's also a study about that. I will answer to your question shortly. Yes, is enough. And I will search in the meanwhile and put in the chat. There is a link to a study for that, which explains you more in detail. Is this answering?
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. Thanks.
Super.
Thank you, Dodo. The next would be Peter Treitler.
Yeah, so my question would be, how big is your team for the design sprints and what are you looking for in the team members? So what kinds of skill sets and backgrounds do the people need?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. We had 10 persons in this back-to-back sprint. We were mixing like the decider, which is usually the business owner or the sponsor of the project. You need a decider as a must in any team, because there can be points in time where you agree to disagree, or you just need a decision. There's a lot of decisioning happening, and this is some person that you need there. Of course, a product owner, some other persons from the, let's say, users perspective, who were about to use the process to give us some insights, and of course the development team. So around 10 persons were in this case, but it's recommendable 7 to 8, something like that. So feed them with 2 pizzas. That's the idea. Otherwise it's getting too much. Does this answer? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. And the next one is Michael Bobestinger. Please, can you phrase your question?
Yes. What was the situation before using design sprints? Did you have one product manager who defines the product overall and is responsible for the outcome? And can you compare both situations for your company?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The situation was that we had a lot of discussions and there was no outcome. So it was recurrent, like every Thursday or Friday, we were talking about the same thing. How do we improve the process? How do we create a new one? Do we want to keep the actual process and so on? And I still remember there was one Friday at around 2 o'clock, I was in a call with 10 persons and everybody was super frustrated because they talked about the same thing over and over. And I was already like reading the book and I said, guys, let's take these 10 days, which is actually not 10 days for the whole team. So you need like the so-called business users, the ones who are using the solution only for 24 hours. And they said, yes, whatever you say. So it depends on the moment where you do it. But I would say it's a good business case because instead of losing a lot of time to talk about things, you just do it, you try it, and you see how it is. Not sure if this is answering, let me know, to your question.
It's okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. And the next question is from Anna-Lisa. Please.
Yeah, thanks. I wondered if the design proposals were very different. Kind of, do you see the similarities and you're hard then to decide A, B, or C, or are they very different and you kind of can kind of collect ideas that are very different? What's your experience?
Thank you for your question. It's an interesting thing. Actually, when you do the lightning demos in the first day of the design sprint, you collect a lot of nice ideas from the internet, from other solutions that you like. And then when people are creating the concepts, they are very, very different. And it's amazing. And sometimes it gets a lot of inspiration in the room. You ask about how difficult it is to choose. In the day of the deciding, when the whole team comes together and looks to all the concepts, they are voting on ideas first and then on the concept. So basically at the end, the decider gets to put a big vote on the concept, like from start to end, that he wants to have implemented in the prototype as a solution, but also gets a small vote on any other idea that he thinks that might also be a nice add-on. It's not easy to do that. What I can say is that even though you choose one concept and one small idea, still in the prototype, you get a lot from the other concepts because they are like very close to each other sometimes. And you reuse it anyhow when you develop the real product, so nothing is lost.
Yes, I can imagine. Yes. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Oh, very good, very good. In the chat, there are no questions left, but maybe in the auditorium, maybe some other has some question. Who wants to ask? Andra, please.
So shall I continue or?
If not, I would have a question. If
please.
Not... Yes. Yeah. What would be for me interesting is, as a facilitator for you now with your experience, what is still your biggest challenge when you facilitate design sprints?
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for the question. The biggest challenge is to stay the guide. So because exactly in this specific case, I was facilitating knowing the content side. So I'm also the Scrum Master for the team. So I needed to switch off whatever felt like I needed to comment and staying only on the facilitation, meaning that I'm not going into the content part. Of course, it's very useful when I know it because I know how to coordinate and help them going from one step to another. But this was really the biggest challenge in this case.
And do you have still support? I think you mentioned also Jack Knapp was with you, or at least for a talk or so, but do you have some support as well for this, who helps and guides you with to prepare these design sprints?
Well, I read the book, and first time when I did it, I was just like after the book going step by step, and then there are also like some trainings for that. but most of important is to try it out. And I believe it's also very relevant to do it in a way that it fits to your team, because it can be, for example, that some teams are very culturally different and you might want to adjust some exercises. It can be that some teams have a very hierarchical approach, and that when you have a decider there, you need as a facilitator to take care that they are talking at the end, that they are somehow letting the freedom of the team to express their opinions and ideas in a very free way, and not to be somehow scared that, oh, my boss is there and so on. So this also quite, yeah, a nice insight.
Okay, very good. Sounds very interesting. And maybe we can visit you sometimes, or also the participant. Maybe there's a possibility to visit you and get more insights on to see on local side what you're doing.
Sure.
If there are not any further questions, then I would say we will close the session.
Oh, 1 second. I was
Yes,
having,
please,
so
Andra.
just wanted to say, because there was a question about the 5 users, I put the link in the chat. So there's the article which gives you more detail. And I wanted also to ask maybe for another quiz, because it's important to me to know what is your takeaway from this session. Is there something that you would like to try, like read the book, for example, or try some exercises? Is there something that you like to take away with you and you would like to share? This would be nice to have some inspiration, because sometimes it's really interesting to see how different people are taking information in a different way. I was once having a boot camp where I was teaching people how to do design sprints, and there was an HR person there, and it was amazing to find out how this can be applied also in the HR area without digital products. So yeah, thank you also. Enthusiasm and focus, insights, inspirational, definitely reading the book, try something new. Super. Thank you so much. At the end, I would also like to invite you, if you want to have a little bit more insights and practice by yourself 2 exercises of the design sprint. I'm running a design sprint bootcamp on the 5th of November. If you're interested, you can just scan the code and you will be redirected to the link where you can register. There is a promo code, especially for you guys, of 10% when you register by Monday evening. And this will have also a monthly call afterwards. So whoever is interested, I'm happy to invite you there. There will be 3 hours and a half, also with Q&A, and I'm looking forward for that.
Very good. Thank you, Anna. And
I will share this with you, of course, then, so that you can give to everybody.
Yes, and maybe I will also talk to our technical guys. Maybe we can also make it available on our mural board with a link or so.
Sure.
We can talk afterwards about this. And I've seen now a final question we received. Maybe we can also answer this, because we have still 7 minutes left, and I would say let's do it. Sure. Elizabeth, do you want to raise a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I mean, when you went through the week, when I remember correctly, you said at the end of day 2, you said, okay, this solution you will go forward and you will implement, and then you gave it to the developers and they had 1 day to create a prototype, because on day 4 you already started with user testing.
Yes,
if that's correct. So the developers were also included in the complete process. That's what I got, right?
Yes, in our case, yes.
And they already knew how, or they were already used to the tools they want to use for this prototype. And because this looked really kind of great, I know also other prototyping possibilities. So that it's more like a pen and paper work, or but this you were already possible to click through. What would you recommend to make it really look good and nice and easy to use, not only Post-its or whatever, or balsamic, or I don't know, Adobe XD, whatever you're using.
Yeah.
It's real that it's yeah,
Catchy.
my question.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. Yes, indeed. In this case, the developers were also part of the team, because in our team, they know a lot of the business, but you can do it in different ways. You can either include them from the beginning or have developers only in the second part. So when the storyboard is created by them after knowing all the details, the easiest way is to use Figma. That's a software that it's super, like you can learn it in 30 minutes. I can just put a link there. It's figma.com, I think, if I'm not wrong. Yes, I will put it in the chat. And that's really easy to, I mean, you don't have to be a developer to use it. It's really easy. And you can do a prototype in, like for the digital product, in 8 hours with it. You can also do it in 6 hours. You don't have to, because you can also do a paper one, as you said. For example, if there is a process that it's referring to some, you know, papers going around, or even persons doing this and this, then you can just simulate that in a prototype. So who is doing this, and I have a paper, and then I give it to you, and you put this information and so on. So if you don't have the possibilities to do it like for digital, then anything is possible. In the book, you will see there is even an example with a robot created for hotels. So really like a physical prototype, and they didn't build the whole robot. The idea was that the clients of the hotel forgot the toothbrush or something home, and they were just calling, and the robot was coming to the door and giving them what they forgot and saying, hey, hello, I brought you the toothpasta. So it was really funny, and another approach of the prototyping.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Andra. Are there any further questions now? We have still 3 minutes left. You can use it. Good. It seems not. I'm sure Andra will also will be available in WonderMe. If you want to get in touch with her, then go to WonderMe, and otherwise use your break and go outside, and then we will see us maybe later to the next and the last talk about from nice shops about Scrum Insights, die du nicht googeln kannst. See you there.
Thank you
Have
so
a
much.
nice day.
See you.
Thank you, Andra. Bye-bye.
Bye.